Good evening, everyone, or good morning, wherever you may be. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych Club from the Tom Numbers Show, top of your game. Welcome to a special edition for Easter of 2024. I've got JUAN in the show. I was going to say in the house, but he's in the car. And I've got my London t-shirt on, London 74, Gematria 74, Jesus 74. So I thought I'd put that on. Juanito, how are you, sir?
Good.
You're driving along and doing your night rider.
Yeah, got errands to run and things to do and places to go, people to see.
The usual.
I'm sure everybody else here does also. So you got to keep moving. It's Saturday. That's not a day off. A lot of people working. A lot of people trying to rush through and get everything done before Easter. But of course, actually, the true Sabbath day is Saturday, and Seventh-day Adventists, a lot of others know that. And so here in Western society, we actually celebrate the wrong day of the week as our Sabbath day. I think we decided, well, we'll pick a day that's the Sabbath day, and that's the day of rest. So anyway.
So what have you got for us today? We seem like we're hurtling closer and closer to something inevitable. Next week is the eclipse on the 8th of April. April Fool's coming up. Obviously Easter tomorrow. So this is a special Easter show for everyone. We've had that event with that bridge in Baltimore. A lot of things seem to be in the mix. There's constant stuff with President Trump. They're trying to get him, and then his company, which is listed as DJT, actually on the markets, has gone up, and he seems to be more well off than ever when they're trying to grab him, which is always what he likes to do to them. So, yeah.
Well, this is spy versus spy. It's good guys versus bad guys. Every trick they have up their sleeve, the people around Trump and Trump himself have something up their sleeve, and it's tit for tat stuff. The more that they attack and assault him, the greater his he's underdog. He's the one that you want to support when it looks like he's not going to make it. And so and by the way, he says that they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. I'm just in the way. And that really, really is the perception of most of the people that are, more classically American conservative minded, that back Trump, this Make America Great Again crowd. The more they attack him, the more people see that as an attack on them, because their values are closer to his than they are to the ones currently holding these high offices. And the other thing that's really important to remember, we had a stolen election here in America. There may be those that don't want to hear it, it's fact. And we're going to prove that out even more so over the next with that in mind. That means that the majority of voting Americans did in fact vote for Trump. When they attack him, they're attacking the people that voted for Trump, which is a majority. So just because of fraud, it looks the other way. That's an untruth. And so the majority of Americans back Trump. The majority of Americans feel personally attacked when the person they voted into office, who's been kept out of office unlawfully, unjustly, fraudulently, is himself attacked. And that's the part that just doesn't quite click for this other team. And then people that did vote for him, the more that they do very bizarre things and support very bizarre principles and ways of life, the more defections they have. A good example is I have Tina Peters with Jen and I traveling right now. And Tina Peters was the clerk in Mesa County, Colorado. And Gold Star Mom, which means that her son died in action and in our service. Just a beautiful gal. She was the county clerk in Mesa, Colorado. She did what federal law required, which was protect the voting information for 2020, where she thought there was a problem potentially. The county where it was at used Dominion voting equipment, and she had what would, what you would describe as a backup drive made of her Dominion machine, just like you make a backup of your computer records with a backup drive. Doesn't change anything, doesn't alter anything. It's just a snapshot of everything in the computer at the moment. And then after Dominion came out and did what they called a trusted build, a service job on her Dominion machine, they serviced it all right. They really fucked it up and changed all sorts of files, hid things, removed things. And so she had another copy made of her machine after they completed that. And then technicians were assigned to look at the before and after, and found that they had changed lots of information in the machine that affected the records of the vote from 2020 and 2022. With that in mind, she was attacked because she did that. She made that known at the Mike Lindell event a couple of years back. That's all important because right now, today, as we speak, there's investigations going on in several places where the record of the vote from 2020 and 2022 is being examined. And we have whistleblowers who've come forward and told exactly what they did to corrupt the vote, how they went into the machines remotely and altered the vote information from remote locations, not inside the United States of America, but from Serbia. And those whistleblowers are giving detailed information, including their declarations or affidavits, their statements of what they did, into the court record now in several cases, but starting with a case by Kerry Lake, who was running for governor of Arizona, and Mark Fincher, who was running for attorney general in Arizona. And then other cases also where these records are going to be made available. Now, the stuff that's in there this second is preparatory for the main releases that'll come later. But the reason that a lot of the precise information has not been put in those records yet is because the court has to decide to docket the case and to review it. And so they're being given just enough to force the Supreme Court to have to docket the case. The additional records will be provided as they begin the review so as not to release it too early for various reasons, legal considerations. And as this plays out and goes deeper, they're also going to get the information, not just the video statements of the people that did the steal, but also of people in other countries besides Serbia. Dominion had a headquarters in Serbia, and that was where a lot of the software was being written and modified for the did that wrong. There we go. Sorry about that. I did that wrong. For the Dominion systems. And part of the thing that I think it would be interesting to the people here listening, if you hadn't heard it already, one of the things is where Dominion has its headquarters in Serbia, It just so happens in the days before the 2020 election, of all the places that Hunter Biden could visit and do his drugs and screw the women, of all places, he goes to a location 1 mile, actually a little less, from the Dominion headquarters. And we have that out of Hunter Biden's computer, which supposedly was classic Russian disinformation, according to 51 intelligence officers who came out just prior to the 2020 election to claim that, it was all false, it was all ridiculous. Well, we have other election data showing that Hunter was right there from one of his other computers right there in the same area. So we know that there was mischief going on. That's going to play out over the next weeks and months. And Americans and the world are going to be faced with this conundrum where we have two presidents, one that was lawfully elected and kept from taking office to represent the American people, and one that was placed there through frauds and through theft and graft, and who is doing the bidding of people other than the American people. And the whole world, everybody in this audience is at risk because the people that are running Biden, which Putin talked about during his Tucker interview, it's not Putin, or it's not Biden that's running Washington, D.C. It's not Biden that's running America. It's people that you don't even know the names of, not even Obama. People you don't know the names of that are pulling those puppet strings. And they have taken the world and Central Europe to the very brink of nuclear war. And it may sound a little extreme to say, oh no, Putin and the Russians, they're not going to nuclear war. You push them far enough and they have no other way to back out, they will take you to nuclear war. They will not back down. And the people pulling the strings, pushing on the strings here, do not grasp that. And that is a very dangerous thing, because actually the people pulling those strings don't want to own or control America or the world. They want to destroy everything in the Northern Hemisphere, cripple us, and then rebuild the world from the Southern Hemisphere. And they don't care that it might be 100, 200, 300 years before the Northern Hemisphere is functional and usable in any way, shape, or form again, because they will rebuild the world their way from the Southern Hemisphere. And they don't need the Northern Hemisphere for the time being. They will just consider it a junk pile that they can go scrap out and use whatever they want from time to time, and gradually let society move back in there, their people, their genetics, their politics, their government, their way.
Is there any reason why, I didn't know that about Dominion headquarters in Serbia? As soon as you mentioned Serbia, I'm sure you know what I thought. It made me think of Tesla. Is Serbia traditionally an energetic hotspot, and so therefore we had the great Tesla from there, and hence maybe Dominion have nested in that region as well because they know, a history or power to it. Is there anything there to the history and the actual locality of Serbia?
I don't know that that's an accurate way of putting it. Look, we have smart guys all over the world, and to say that Serbia has some exclusive angle, I don't think that's an accurate way of looking at us. Tesla himself, the reason that he was so successful is because of his personal self-discipline. His parents were ministers, and he grew up with a sense of ministry to the world. He learned how to compute in his mind and to do calculations in his mind. Anything that he built, he would literally, instead of going through the trouble of building it physically, he thought that people like Alexander Graham Bell, who did 1,000 light bulbs before he came up with the one that worked, and did repetitiously numerous different variations of inventions he came up with. Tesla would literally work through in his mind proportions and reactions of materials and fluids and do the calculations on the speed of reaction. He used a base 9 number system that he preferred over the base 10. He was familiar with base 6 and other base number systems. And he preferred base 9 for a bunch of reasons. It matched other things in the physics that he was observing. And so he wouldn't get bogged down with all the time-consuming aspects of building something, except to do it in his mind, which was not as expensive, and except to concentrate and go through it. And then once he had things set in the way they would work, he would go through it over and over again mentally to verify each aspect, memorizing the function, and then he would commit it to paper, proportions and things like that. And in that way, he could build more things faster and perfect them, and had less room for error. And he had so many things that he created and invented. It's hard to even fathom how much he produced in his lifetime. Howard Hughes, when he was young, his big treat was that Tesla, every year on Tesla's birthday, would give a new invention to the world. Instead of giving a gift, he would getting gifts from people, he would give gifts to the world. And so and then they'd be published, and he would allow the publication on his birthday. So Howard Hughes' big treat was every year on July 10th that his mom would take him to a newsstand, and he would go through the various publications looking for the publications that showed Tesla's new invention released for his birthday. And that was his big treat. So July 10th was like Christmas for Howard Hughes. Tesla he was a good-looking guy. He actually loved to go to the beach. He was an outdoorsy person. When they built Wardenclyffe, he was there doing stuff into the wee hours of the night, day after day after day, to build it out. He was somewhat of a ladies' man. They thought he was a pretty handsome guy. He was creative. He was thoughtful. He was interesting. And Morgan, J.P. Morgan's daughter, wanted him in the worst way, and he enjoyed her, liked her. But in the end, even though she came with a huge dowry, potentially, to make him a very, very wealthy man, he feigned that he rejected it. And his logic that he told friends, including herself, was that he felt that what he needed to do, the things that he was under some type of divine ordinance to do for the world, were so important that he would not be able to divert and divide his attentions fairly to a wife or children, because those distractions would cost him the ability to complete his mission, to give these things to the world that were needed and would change the way the world moved and functioned. And so he was so clear in his mind about things that he had yet to complete and finish that he never got married. Lots of very famous people enjoyed his company. Mark Twain, the writer, was a frequent guest of Tesla. And one of the fun things that Tesla did is he had a vibrating plate that he'd created to help the circulation in the body and shake things loose, if you will. And so this vibrating plate that he'd created, he had it in the shop. Mark Twain saw it, and of course Tesla had set him up for it. And he got on it and thought it was, really stimulated all the nerve endings and got the stomach juices flowing and like that. And Tesla, after a minute or two, says, "Well, you probably can't do that too long. You might have done it as long as you need to." And Mark Twain, nah, this is great. I want to stay. This is awesome. And then after a moment or two, oh, yeah, I gotta get off. Where's the restroom? It shook his innards enough that it broke stuff loose. That was a Tesla invention. He had lots and lots of fun, exciting things that he did and enjoyed. He was a bit of a he liked a good joke. He liked a good story. And then another thing about Tesla that very few people realize is he was a vegan, and he from his growing up was aware of some of the writings that Christ's brother James was said never to have eaten human flesh, or I mean, human flesh, animal flesh, excuse me, and did not want to do that. He wanted to live like they did in the garden, and like some future generations will, after the return of the Messiah in the millennial period and beyond, where they will only live as they did in the garden off the seed-bearing plants and fruits and like that. And so Tesla was a vegan all of his life, and then he stayed at the Waldorf Astoria, and they had particular food that he enjoyed, and they made it all that time. And so instead of having a house or all the other stuff, he would stay there at the hotel, and they took very good care of him. So a lot of fun things about him. I don't know if you got me started on Tesla, but that was kind of a fun thing.
We like Tesla. We like him. Is there a connection between, you've mentioned before on different shows, one, so with Howard Hughes and Tesla, were they related in any way, either in this life or maybe bloodlines of the past at all? Is there any connection between them?
No, not
Okay.
not that I'm aware of. And there was no, Howard Hughes himself was quite a character. He, part of the problem for Howard Hughes was that he wanted to emulate Tesla in the way that Tesla functioned and worked and thought. And so that was one of the unique things about him, was that he saw Tesla as a model for him in many ways. So, yeah.
Interesting, because he was resided in Vegas, didn't he? Look, I've just looked at it, and you brought them up. So July 10th is 135, if I've done that right. Yeah, Trump's uncle, working with Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla 119, redemption. There's a mirror on 9/11 with that. But Nikola Tesla, July 10th, comes to 254. I've heard you say before that Christ's birthday, well, actually, I think I've heard you say this. I'll just check it. Christ's birthday, September 11th. Is that correct?
Yeah, his true date of birth was September 11th, 3 BC.
Yeah.
And we have that from lots of different things. There's some controversy about that. I've read through all of it and looked at it, but I'm very comfortable that that's the accurate date that of his birth. And part of the reason is because if you look at the Festival of Lights, at what we, Hanukkah, at what we celebrate as Christmas, which they claim is the birth of Christ date. The reality is that is the Saturn festival. And so many of the celebrations that we do in the West are based on occult themes, cult ideas. And that was a Roman holiday of debauchery, etc. And so the early church in the Constantine period did the celebration of Christ's birth during that period, allegedly, because it was such a popular holiday, they just rebranded it and adopted it. But from the scriptures, the sheep tending people and other things, the descriptions describe a fall event. And then there's certain stuff having to do with the temple and certain temple events and Noah and things like that that all tie to that same date. So the guys that have done extensive research have done, amazing jobs at pointing out all the intricacies. And God does stuff with exacting precision. So you think that it was willy-nilly or haphazard, it's not to understand how God functions. The Festival of Lights, when you are doing artificial insemination, you do the actual fertilization of the egg in little petri dishes. They'll have a whole bunch of eggs, and they'll have the sperm, and they will fertilize them in these petri dishes. They use high-speed cameras to observe it. And as the sperm fertilizes the egg and penetrates the wall, they will have a flash. And what they do is they'll look at the flash of each fertilized egg, and some are stronger than others, more intense. And so the egg that exhibits the strongest flash or reaction is the strongest one to implant. And so they'll pick, a couple of them that were the strongest and do the implant in the female. And so in that sense, the Festival of Lights, which Hanukkah is about, is this moment of fertilization of the egg, God and man, conception. And then at the appropriate time, season, you go out from that at Hanukkah, you end up at September time frame, and the precise date is September 11th. So anyway, just, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, interesting. It was interesting when you were talking about Tesla, you talked about Christ, you talked about Howard Hughes. So I was looking at the date. So Nikola Tesla's 119, redemption. It's a reverse of 9/11. And the date, the birth date, July 10th, comes to 135, comes to John Trump, Ivana Trump. But if you add them together, that's 254, the 254th day of the year on a non-leap year. So in 2001, Kubrick obviously knew about that, comes to the 254th day of the year is September 11th. So it's interesting that you brought those lines of thought together. But yeah, if you add those two important parts with Tesla, his birthday and his name, comes to 254, which is the day of the year that Christ was born. Nikola Tesla life, or Nikola Tesla again, comes to 151, which is Jesus Christ 151. Yeah, interesting. Going back to the first question I had about...
reason, let me say this. There is artificial patterns that are really forced, that are concocted, that men come up with to create a maze or matrix that fits certain people's purposes. And there's a more natural version that God leaves as a hidden fingerprint of his own presence. And so we don't run our lives by these dates that men may come up with. that's not really what we're doing. Spiderweb out of the way today. This is one of my favorite spots, by the way. A number of great vets buried up here. One of my good friends is here.
Yeah, we've had that conversation before about natural and artificial. But there's, if your intention's good and pure, you can notice these things, and that's what us mere anons are trying to do. And if you do Tower 1, 115, 11.5, that's this year's election. And if you do Tower 2, 139 transition, which also comes to a turnstile, add them together comes to 254 again. So Tower 1 plus Tower 2 comes to 254, September 11th. So there's two sides, there's ones where they try to shoehorn things in, and if it's just even from a deceptive, evil intention, but if there's a good divine intention, there's light all over the place, which is what we're looking for.
Well, in the case of 9/11, there was a desire to vilify the true date of the Messiah's birth, and to make it a reprehensible day, to scar it, to mar it, and also to gate in the demons that through that birth channel, that portal that was represented by the twin showers, and which is what they intended to do. And so there's certain evil intent put in there. And of course, even this event that happened the other day with the bridge here, I've mentioned it a couple of other places, but it's worth reminding this audience. The reason, above all others, in my personal opinion, that we can be very comfortable that was not as happenstance or accidental as some would believe, or want us to believe, is the numbers, and something, of course, that your audience enjoys specifically. So in the number world, 1:29 a.m. when the attack occurred, some have said 1:28, but if you check, actually 1:29.
Was it? Okay.
The true exact time of the completion of the collapse is 1:29. And so
was it hit at 1:28 and then it collapsed at 1:29?
It was hit right at the stroke between the two.
Minutes. Okay.
Yeah. It was completed. The boat came to a full stop at 1:29. So why is that? And of course, look, I can tell you, in a perfect world, trying to make stuff happen within those exact seconds is not an easy thing. My boat was just shy of 200 tons, and trying to get something that big,
we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah. Well, I don't know I'll be getting anytime soon. I've got so many things that that was why I had to let it go. I just wasn't getting to it to have fun.
Making me think of Jaws with the sea captain,
Yeah, that was a little boat. Yeah. That
so
boat,
your boat used to be 200 tons.
Just for comparison, that boat in the movie Jaws was probably about 35, 40 tons. So
okay.
Might not have even been that. Depends what the power plant was, but anyway.
So your boat used to be 200 tons.
Yeah, but the reason that's important, trying to get something exactly where you want it with that kind of precision, is a pretty amazing thing. But why is 1:29 critical? First of all, let's just kind of go through the numbers for a second, since your audience enjoys that. It's hard to do with most audiences, but I'll do it with yours. 1:29 is the sum of the first 10 prime numbers in the base 10 system. So, you take each of the prime numbers, add them together of the first 10,
and the total is 129. 10 is the number of the law. It's 10 commandments, things like that. And so somebody's wanting to lay down the law on this and own and control this moment. Well, who is it? When you look at 129, do we see other places that it's used by people who want to own and control and do lawfare to the world? Well, when President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, it was 1229, but in Washington D.C., it was 129. The reason 129 is also so critical in so many different venues is in a base 6 system. 129 is 333, and so because different numbers have different value projections, just like Tesla preferred a base 9 system, and he would work in that same context with the base 6 and for other reasons that one worked with the other. But in the base 6 system, that 333, the devil and his crew, when they were ejected from heaven and fell to earth, Christ said, "I saw you fall like lightning." A third of the angels were ejected with Satan, Lucifer, the devil. And so they like that third, or 333. And that's like a hidden fingerprint of who we are. And their attempts to prevail and lay down the law and own and control things going on. And in part, they do it through death, murder, to leverage their position to control the moment. So, for example, the submarine that attempted to nuke Hawaii, March 11th of 1968, just after midnight, at approximately 1:29 in the morning local, the submarine attempted to fire a nuke on Hawaii, and the number on that submarine was K-129. And they used it over and over. Our first cruise missile that we used in the American system, air-launched cruise missile, was, I forget what it was called, the AG-129, I believe it was. And it's a number that's used over and over and over again to denote control, ownership, leverage, death, murder, destruction, by these cabal members, these people working in the background, just out of sight. And then others within their orbit will see the numbers, and then they know, yeah, that's us. That is our project. Assist, get out of the way, don't interfere, take comfort. We have control, we're in charge, etc.
Talking of 9/11 and the portals, so recently we've got, well, it's come up recently, but we've got the eclipse taking place in about 9 days or so, 10 days, whenever it is, 8th of April. People have been saying, and I haven't really studied this, I've just seen it on different posts going around. People are saying that NASA's going to launch 3 rockets to try and do something. And then there's also this connection. They're saying that CERN is going to do something or try to do something when the eclipse takes place. Is either of those two things any truth in that, any accuracy in that? And if so, why? What do they hope to accomplish?
Well, first off, you have to understand who NASA is. Never a straight answer.
That could go for many, couldn't it?
Nothing of what they tell you is what's really going on. And of course, NASA is the most occult agency in the American government. They are totally involved in everything to work the magic arts. And so from their inception, their creation, the people running and working inside the NASA system were occultists and practitioners of the dark arts. The what's his name? Guy that created or was named after Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I can't even think. Jack Parsons, who actually went by a couple different names. Jack Parsons was doing ritual spells and sex magic with his wife and other women to try to gate in spiritual forces, entities, to learn the secrets that had been hidden from prior eras, from other places, on how to manipulate physical matter and to do the things that would create the rockets and rocketry to leave this world and to go to other worlds. And Parsons, as others did, believed that we were on a prison planet here, that when the devil was cast down out of heaven and fell to earth, that this was a prison, a containment. Satan is called the prince of the power of the air. He's limited to the edge of the atmosphere or wherever the air can take it. If you have humans in their air packs, if you will, and could leave this world, then the devil and his demons could leave it with them and go wherever they could travel. But they're in this containment zone in the minds of many of these occultists. And that's why they're so interested in, for example, the Tower of Babel in the Bible, to build a tower out to, the sky. Some of the reason being, but there had been not one, but two floods. There was the flood with Noah, and there was a prior flood many thousands of years earlier, of which there's additional writing all over the world. And in fact, we see the evidence of it in a lot of places, including down at the libraries, the underground libraries in Egypt, from prior civilization, other stuff up in Turkey and some of the regions of northern Central Europe. And the reason that that's important is that the Tower of Babel was actually more than just a building to the sky. They were bringing together all of the knowledge, the understanding from around the world to create the capability to do by various methods, whether it be astral projection or literal physical craft, to leave this and move out. And of course, with the Indian Bhagavad, there was other knowledge that appears to have been pre-Adamic, before Adam and Eve were created, of a presence of humanoids, not human, in a prior world right here on the earth that somehow was destroyed in some cataclysm that would be a combination of the floods and other disasters, including what we have found with at least 2 nuclear detonations, where we see the artificial isotopes that are only created artificially, where there was 2 nuclear detonations in India, 2 cities destroyed. And of course, the Bhagavad describes that type of event, where weapons could be used to destroy whole cities. And this God wielded that kind of power. And then, of course, Oppenheimer quoting the Bhagavad when the first detonation occurred at Trinity to test a nuclear weapon in New Mexico. And he said, I am made like God, a destroyer of worlds. And so the god Vishnu saying that as he could destroy worlds from his aerial craft. So in the Tower of Babel, they were actually involved in something that is akin to a space program. Now, it might seem silly. Oh, these were ancient times. They don't have the technology, whatever. If you think about it, from the first flying machines, which actually were in the early 1800s for powered craft, heavier than air, not the balloons, which went back quite some time before that, lighter than aircraft. And sometime I'll talk about that in more detail. It's actually an important history. But let's just say arbitrarily 300 years of industrialization, coming together, building basic factories, gunpowder revolution, etc., to today with advanced rocketry, space travel, etc. If in a time where people lived much, much, much longer lives than we have today, they were still living a few hundred years of age, and where everybody could communicate. You didn't have people disconnected from each other with this language barrier to communicate thoughts completely and articulately and precisely. Then it's quite conceivable that people coming together with an idea to build a tower to the heavens, to create a capability to leave this world and go to other worlds, that was that impossible. It was just a time equation and division of labor. So it's quite possible, but God intervened, seeing that nothing that they put to heart, excuse me, or mind, nothing that they committed themselves to as a group would be impossible to them. So it wasn't time yet. They weren't prepared. They were full of sin and corruption and evil intent. And so God confused the languages of all of the workmen, the people, the families that were present at the Tower of Babel, so they couldn't communicate their ideas, and they scattered. And by the way, a little interesting aside, Crick and others looking at the DNA patterns in people found a repeating pattern, and not just in one language, where there's authorship, ownership of the DNA code, where it appears that many, if not all or every language that we see in the world, but at least numerous, where they've looked at it in the DNA, repeat the same code message, but in different languages. And they've spent quite a bit of time talking about that. And that is God alive within us. And it's like a computer code hidden within the programming to show authorship of the persons behind the writing of the code. Code writers like to put little sneaky things in different places that they own.
Got it done within the body
like that. And right. And so, that within this incredibly extensive, unbelievably complex DNA code within the body, of which we just look for certain markers to identify one person to a next, but it's far more complex even than that, there is this underlying hidden code, God alive within us, in every language that we can encrypt in there. So it's hidden authorship of a creator, not random organization, evolution, if you will. And but with that in mind, that these people that were building this tower were confused, because if they could continue to pool their labors and knowledge, that they would one way or another be able to leave this prison planet, do a breakout, if you will. But in today's era, what is it today that has broken again that imprisonment for mankind, that allows us to bring our thoughts, our intentions together, to have the wherewithal to build ships, to leave this planet, to begin to inhabit near space above the planet, and prepare to reach out to the other planets and moons in our own solar system, and in the not too distant future, whether it be 200-300 years or 1,000 years, an instant in the long march of time, to stretch out away from this place and across the star systems. What is it that is allowing us to defeat the confusion of the languages that happened at the Tower of Babel? Well, it's the computer. And those that understood what was going on, see, we can communicate now clearly with others, and it's improving every day, who do not speak the same language as we do. Numerous languages. You can't learn all the languages well that you would need. If somebody speaks 5 or 6 languages, that's an incredible, astonishing feat. But if you're spending all the time learning these different languages and the intricacies and the nuances, then do you have time in your life to go learn the sciences that you want to communicate, metallurgy, fluid dynamics, 1,000 different things, the math, numerous different kinds of math, to be able to communicate complex thoughts and ideas. It's very, very difficult. But with the computer and the language of numbers, we can defeat what was done at the Tower of Babel. And then there's numerous different computer languages. Of course, I mentioned the Sanary base 6 system. We have other bases, binary, with ones and zeros for computer code. By the way, do this simple exercise, see how much people were calculating and knew the import of certain names that they wanted to brand into ideas, because we create these languages, we create words with certain meanings and applications. So just take English, put 1 beside A, 2 beside B, 3 beside C, or switch it and try it also this way. Put 6 beside A, 12 beside B, 18 beside C. And then go take a word like computer and see what number you come up with. And remember that the number of war is 11 or 111. And the tools of war are often given a 111, a 666, a 333, and then other groups like their numbers, the skull and bones, 223. And it has very unique, specific meaning within those groups. They do communications. The timing of events, certain numbers, 19.47, 1947, is another common one, because that's the difference between the area where the location of the equator on a revolving sphere to the tip of a triangle or a tetrahedron, if it's 3-dimensional, below the equator of that sphere or above. Critical within the other physics. In order to operate the other physics, you have to know the meaning of that number, and how to dial it into things or events or places. And utilize it. So, it's a little secret handshake code. If you understand this, you understand, the way things really work in a base 9 system. If you want to do powerful things using, you have matter that is the larger matter, 3 dimensions that we deal with, that we live in, and then you have other dimensions of matter that aren't vaporous or illusory. They just are smaller than the tools we have to handle and manipulate, smaller than 2 widths of an electron. Doesn't mean that it's not physical. It is physical. This doesn't mean that it's, just an idea. It's just smaller than what we can easily, readily manipulate and work with our clumsy, large molecular structures. But if you understand it's there, you can do things that utilize that energy and gate it, using the physical matter and certain field effects and spin and things like that. And of course, you mentioned CERN a few minutes ago. So what are they really trying to do? They believe that they can gate spiritual entities that occupy this near physicality that's just beyond 3-dimensional physicality into our world. And they can do it through mechanical means. This has a ritual to it. There's a ritual aspect to it that Shiva and things like that they try to describe and mimic, but it's actually based on real physics. And you have to kind of think about how would a very advanced culture try to describe and encode and memorialize for future generations certain concepts or ideas, to less advanced people, but to keep it in some kind of ritualistic form for later generations when you start rebuilding. The concept being that, going back to Mount Hermes, there in the Mideast, where the 200 gods, all male, were said to have fallen to earth. And at the base of Mount Hermon built this city called the city of Baal, where they required human sacrifice, child sacrifice, in order to protect the humans, the people that were present there. And people would come through the gates at the edge of the city, the gate of Baal, bring a sacrifice, and then would receive protection and assistance from the gods. So people literally bringing human children for sacrifice in that evil city to these godlike entities that had fallen from the sky. Well, were they really gods or angels, or were they just humanoids, not fully human, and not descendants of Adam, in other words, and the giants, if you will, from some prior period civilization that were marooned here, and they had higher knowledge, but didn't have the tools, the mechanisms to build back out and get off this prison planet. How would they share and code some knowledge, some information, and were they the only ones? And by the way, just if for anybody thinks, well, that's kind of silly stuff. Well, the location of the highest altitude location on planet Earth of a human or of a World Heritage Site recognized by the UN, a site of historical importance to the whole world, is at the top of Mount Hermon. Because of the 200 that reportedly fell there, they memorialized it as the most important high altitude location on planet Earth, the peak, the pinnacle of civilization, human heritage that we need to note and record at the UN because they believe it. And their actions are affecting all of us. The archway gate that was preserved, it was still there, one gateway left in Syria. When the attacks in Syria began and ISIS and like that, we had just had a team that had gone there from the UN under a money that they got from one of the committees to do detailed photographic imagery, 3D, ultra high resolution of that archway or gate at the edge of the city of Bale at the base of Mount Hermon. And then they went back and duplicated it in foam. And after they had these very intricate, precise duplications, ISIS, which is actually Western intelligence agencies working in plain sight in their own occult stuff, they blew up the gate of Baal there at the base of Mount Hermon as, this religious artifact and, some evil prior thing. But at the time they blew it up, there was purportedly religious rituals that were done with several of these gates that had been constructed to baptize them, to transfer power from the one gate in Syria to multiple gates. And then one of these copies was headed to America, and Hillary Clinton was going to stand in that archway or gate in New York and make a presentation in the weeks before the 2016 election. Why was she wanting to do this presentation in this archway or gate from this wicked, evil city where human sacrifice was practiced in ancient times? Why would she want to speak in a replication of that gate? Because archways or gates are memorially places where demonic forces, dark energies from this adjacent physicality can gate through, and where humans can interact with the spirits in this just out of sight world next to it. And so archways have always been classically similar to mirrors or gateways of the non-physical in 3 dimensions world, a very real world of subatomic physics where energies are more dense and powerful. And if you can gate them through, you can utilize that energy to do work. And Hillary was going to gate those entities. By the way, she's a witch. She's a card-carrying member of the Wing Coven out in the West Coast and an honorary member on the East Coast. So a literal witch and a practitioner of these dark forces to gate them into the world. And that's why they made multiple of these archways and then commissioned them to do work to gate demons and spirits into this world. And in the same vein, the intent with CERN is also to gate in these spirit entities, these energies, these dark forces into the physical world to do work. And those that bring them in to the world have ownership and control of these entities while they're here by doing certain spells and concoctions and actions. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of the space program with NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Jack Parsons or Jack White, depending on which name you wanted to go by, and his practices and trying to gate these entities. And so NASA, of course, uses all these names of the various gods for their programs, Apollo and Gemini, Jupiter. And then their launch times are based on certain windows that pay homage to the gods. You think that they're doing these things because it's a launch window that works, because it puts a satellite into an orbit that does certain things, etc. And the reality is they're doing it based on when Sirius is rising over the horizon, the star Sirius, they came from before they were cast down to the earth in some prior period, and the dog star and other things. And they're really doing a ritual using the people's money to gate in spiritual dark energy for their purposes. When we finally decide to cast aside all of these spiritual ritualistic things and just do a real space program, it's going to be a whole different world. A non-militarized space access program will be amazing, and that's what I hope to get to do at some later point. But right now, there's no use wasting time on it. All of the space access is based on military programs and plans and dark energies and demonic gating. And I'll use this as an example, the whole ISIS thing, which I've talked to your audience many times about. Isis, Osiris, Horus, which all of Washington, D.C. is built around those occult themes, beginning with the penis of Osiris, the Washington Monument, right there in plain sight. The whole federal city is built around the penis of Osiris, a god who was killed by his brother, and then his mom, who had sex with his dead corpse and a dildo, the penis that she fashioned out of stone to birth Horus in this ritual thing. All of DC is built around this occult theme and theology. Why is that important to us right now? Because within all of what they're doing, even to the space program, the space station, ISIS, and the Elon Musk rocket systems, the Dragon. And what happened with the first launch of a ship going up to ISIS? The Dragon mated with ISIS. They were doing a ritual, spiritual sex magic going all the way back to Jack Parsons and the beginning of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and breeding and mating and bringing in these entities and then returning to the earth and bringing the babies. All through the scripture, all through the Bible, Revelation, we talk about these dragons. We see these dragons. What's a dragon? It's just a snake, a serpent, as was cast down the devil, Lucifer, Satan, the green man, after sin came into the world in the garden. But it's a serpent with hands and legs. The Cainite race, where it's this hybridization of the serpent and human DNA merged together. And then we become the arms and legs of the devil, Lucifer, Satan himself, to go out and do his green man work in the world and to steal the world away from the descendants of Adam. That's this ritual, this vast, broad, deep thing that you're seeing take place in the world all around you. That really is what NASA is a key component in pulling off to complete their rituals and their takeover of Earth, and then to move back off the prison planet to go other places, and the whole knowledge thing. Because what was it that was there at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? And so by bringing this knowledge into the world, into the human race, that God wasn't letting Adam and Eve have, which is true. Adam was the greatest scientist ever, named all the plants and animals, understood everything, and then he was teaching Eve. She sought to catch up to Adam in one fell swoop, because she came after Adam and learned all these things, and then realized he didn't have a mate. And she was learning, but she wanted to catch up with Adam. And so by eating of the tree of knowledge, she could be as smart as Adam. That's, you know, these are things we could talk on for hours and hours and hours. But just a teaser for your audience. Tom, I've got other commitments here that I mentioned to you earlier that I've got.
Yeah,
to,
we'll wrap up. Thanks, Juan. Just in closing, just one question with that.
Question. Yeah.
You explained about Dragon and Isis. What is it that gives it, Pat? You talked as well just prior to that. You talked about, you know, smaller than the subatomic. You said that there's whatever's in there is really super powerful, and they're able to manipulate and garner that energy. What is it that does that then? That, you know, when they do the rituals, is it because it's been done so many times throughout history with an evil intention that there's a kind of reservoir of intention and power that gives it the potency, or are they actually drilling in between the particles and harnessing that super powerful energy that is super small, and they're able to somehow through those rituals able to use it and manipulate it for their purposes?
Well, as soon as you talk about intention, you're getting into kind of the Feynman thing and all that, and that just isn't accurate. And it's not an accurate description of what's there. I'll lose a bunch of people who say, no, you're no. Well, all right, whatever. But
so is
the
it
reality
is through the rituals they're specifically and deliberately able to go in and harness that super potent energy that is super small but very powerful? They're able to do that through the rituals. Is that what it is?
Well, some of it can be accessed in that way. You're taking, you know, try and give just as rudimentary of a comparison as I can. If there's certain tools, mechanics, if you will, say in the DNA that's encoded in certain types of DNA that's a little different from one thing to another. Think of an email address, or as a short version of a much longer possible computer code, but just use your email address. If you forget to put a dot in there that you have encoded into your email address, it doesn't go anywhere. It says, you know, incomplete, you know, can't send, it's not right, whatever. You have to get every dot and tittle precise, or it doesn't work. In rituals, they have to be exact and precise, including even in many of them, the time of day or time of year that they're done, the physical event. We have eclipses all around the world, you know, very, very frequently. It's just that certain of them occur at certain places that might have greater meaning to the people in that path. And so, and there is a physical effect during eclipses, some of them more powerful than others, that occurs because it's like throwing a rock in a stream. And the water diverts around it. Throw a big enough rock, I divert the whole stream. And at the edges of the rock, you'll have vortices of energy racing to get around the rock and refill the gap behind it. In certain field effects, you don't see that energy with enough coherency, precision, velocity to actually grab it, harness it, etc. But during certain celestial events, that field effect or energy that is otherwise there but very scattered becomes very concentrated at certain areas. And super short version is, imagine that some advanced race, just a few hundred years ahead of where we're at right now, potentially, or 1,000, had utilized the denser energy of that adjacent matter system. what's the matter with matter and why does it matter? My paper. So what is that? So 1 second. One moment here. Um, um, in that adjacent system, you need to gate that power through and utilize it. Well, in some advanced prior culture, use of electrical, magnetic, photonic energy would be so weak, so incoherent, so scattered, that you wouldn't even waste time with it because you want the denser subatomic matter to do the work with. And so if you're looking for an electrical effect, a magnetic effect, a photonic effect, which is the tools that we use in the physical matter universe that we inhabit, we inhabit the subatomic also, but we just don't have tools that readily use it. You got to use the inferred effect. If you learn how to use that, the power density is so much greater that, for example, you could take all the water and all the oceans of the entire Earth, and if you had one cup, if you had this much dark energy, which that cup does have a cup's worth of dark energy in it, I could, if I had a perfect ability to utilize that energy that's sitting in that cup right now, I could boil all of this water, take it up above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and cause it to turn to vapor. I could vaporize all the oceans of the world instantaneously if I had a device able to utilize the power just in that coffee cup that I just showed you. That's how much density you have in that dark matter realm. If you can just gate a flea fart of that energy into the physical world, the power is so great that you can power starships with, waveguides to velocities, near the speed of light, and other things. It's once you kind of understand the concept of that's where you get into this matter antimatter ability need to harness that field effect that is present during certain physical processes. And that's the other energy thing. If you know where to look and how to look at it, if you know how to gate that, then you would have power beyond comprehension to do incredible work. That's what they're trying to do with things like CERN. And then they also want to bring the entities that occupy that space into the physical world to be their servants, to do their work their way, and to provide the knowledge that they have to do things in this world. And, they will fail. Ultimately, God himself will not allow that these entities can destroy the world or the creation, Adam and his seed. But, they're going to try. And that's the fight we're in as a planet. And so anyway, Tom, I've got to go.
All right, buddy.
I
Thanks,
always
Juan.
appreciate your audience and everybody there. And by the way, you can go over to the Jennifer Mack. Got to put the in there.
Yep,
She's got a bunch of stuff over there. I think
we'll put a link up.
There is just a few hours probably left at this point on a sale over at allpatriots.com at Gum Road. We had a handful of the 2023 Megador coins that we held back until we had all the orders filled last year, and so we released that handful. There's not very many, so if anybody wants to, and we're not shipping them all over the world, they're U.S. delivery only, but that's there too. So always appreciate doing stuff with you there, Tom, and we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Juan. I've got 10 seconds. I'll just say at the end, when you go into that realm of the denser matter, and it usually brings back a demonic spirit. Why is it we can't bring back divine God beings in that method? Maybe that's a discussion for another time, but I wonder why the
angels
lack
traverse across the earth all the time. God's time is not a limit to God or his angels. That's why the angel Michael and Gabriel walked across time from the end of this age to Daniel back prior to Esther in Persia there in Babylon, and gave him information about where the world was going then and what the end of this age was. They were across time like we walk across the street. And so there's lots of interesting things even in scripture like that talk about these things, but there is also limits to the created beings that God has put in there for what they can do. The devil and his angels do not have the ability to transit time. And so they are limited and fixed in their places, chained. And
why is it negative entities that seem to accompany when people go into, with CERN, when they're trying to do, open these portals, etc.? Why is it we don't get lots of good deity, lots of God energy coming through as opposed to the negative demons?
Well, because they're gating with certain designs, just like with DNA. Why do I have to have eye of newt, horny goat, various other things? Each of these creations, these entities have different DNA, and so they're creating a concoction to gate a particular coded message. Just like I was saying, if you have an email address or a computer code, and you have to have, for example, Windows or any of the other big companies, they're taking code from several companies that they've purchased and adding it into their code and making it longer and longer so that you can do artwork or math work. You can do language translation, all sorts of things, all within the same broader code, because they've merged numerous, tools that others have created into one great big huge tool, and they're doing these concoctions in their vats. They're combining different DNA codes together to gate certain entities that may be tied to it. Remember, your DNA in your body is actually tied to a library of consciousness that is outside of physicality in that other dimension. And so that's why mothers sometimes can hear or know that something has happened to a child. They have shared DNA. The mother has access to that computer file in that location outside of physicality. That's why the seers, the soothsayers and things like that, they'll need a strand of hair, toothbrush with DNA on it, a piece of clothing, and they'll hold that and use their own energy, which is not physical, electromagnetic, photonic. It has to do with this ability. Your heart actually has a field around it that is of this material matter. And so they use their own field effect to animate that DNA and then access the library of consciousness of that person. And it's an interesting discussion. But that is also why they're trying to match the DNA, if you will, of these prior entities, giants, gods, etc. That's why they want the mummified remains of certain of the people, because they can reanimate it, just like you would do a dinosaur mated with a cow or something like that.
So they're deliberately targeting through the action of it. They deliberately have got an email address, a code that they're trying to seek out those particular types. I guess my final thought is, if CERN or something similar in for want of a better phrase, under a good group, a President Trump group, a white hat group, could they do something similar with a different email address or a different piece of code or DNA and draw down the armies of heaven and God, literally?
Well, the reality is that you're thinking that we have to use their methods and their tools to do our work. The reality is that we have authorities. The earth and everything that is in it was given to Adam and his seed, and authority over the earth and everything that creeps and crawls on the earth.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, we don't have to do their spells. We have legal license authority to do certain things via the blood of Christ, the DNA in that blood, and paid the price. And so, from a Christian or divine perspective, a child of God, properly aligned, has more authority than the devil himself, and can tell the devil where to go and what to do. That's part of why the devil hates mankind, because when they exercise their authority correctly within their divinely given authorities, license, title, deed, that there is no entity of darkness. There is no agent of darkness. There is no demon, the devil himself, who has greater authority to do anything. They are subject to the children of God who have been restored to right relationship with God in heaven, and they command the earth and everything in it. The devil wants dominion over man, but man has legal, lawful dominion. It's a fraud of the devil to say that you're going to get something from the devil when God himself has already given it to his children. And that's the story of the Bible, the genetics, the code, the numbers, everything, ultimately. And so we don't care about their numbers. We have superior numbers, superior power. We don't do our stuff according to their precepts. We command them, and we don't have to do a Ouija board, a magic code, computer science to access the things that God has for us. I won't use satanic rituals to gain knowledge to access space. It's simple. It doesn't even, you don't need it if you're not doing it in a militarized fashion. Space access is beyond simple. So, and what we can do there. So,
I guess it'd be wonderful when we can just in effect nuke the whole lot. Just be like, okay, heaven on earth, here we go, and just
it'll be heaven above earth and
do it.
beyond. Remember, the heavenly city is actually a space station. It's not on Earth. If you look at the heavenly city that comes during the millennial period, it's 3,000 miles on each side. It's a big cube. That's why they had to villainize it with the Borg cube in Star Trek and like that. The reality is the heavenly city is a cube. That's what John describes when he took out a measure and measured it. But,
where will that be? Where will that rest on the Earth? One location.
It doesn't rest on the Earth. That's the whole point. It's a station above the Earth. Yeah,
okay.
So it replaced the moon.
And will it orbit around, or will it hover over a certain particular area or region?
No, the way it's described as being in geosynchronous over Israel. So, but we'll get into that some other time.
Jerusalem.
I've got to fly. Yes.
Okay.
So, all right.
Happy Easter, one. Thanks, man.
All right.
God bless. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.